He started remembering her before he even knew she existed. Vivid dreams, scattered flashes, the smell of rain on her skin, the warmth of her voice, the ache of missing someone you haven't met yet. At first, he thought it was just imagination, a mind coping with loneliness maybe, until he walked into a coffee shop on a quiet Thursday morning and she was there. Same smile, same scar above the eyebrow, same name, but she looked at him like he was a stranger. That's when his heart broke for the first time, for a second time. He spent days replaying it in his head. Her face, the way her hand cradled the cup, the tilt of her laughter. He knew these details before he ever saw them. How was that possible? If you've ever felt like your heart knew someone before your mind could explain it, hit subscribe. Because this story isn't about remembering love. It's about being the one left with it. Now, back to that moment. The moment he saw her, alive and breathing, unaware of the lifetime they'd already shared. He didn't approach right away. He just stood there, frozen in the doorway, while she laughed with a friend. A sound he used to know. He told himself it was a coincidence, that he was projecting a fantasy onto a stranger. But when she tucked her hair behind her ear, exactly, like in his memories, he knew. They had loved each other once, but only he remembered. Julian didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed with the lights off, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the quiet certainty that he wasn't losing his mind. He was remembering something real, or rather someone. Claire. He whispered her name like a prayer, like a memory too sacred to say aloud. The name itself felt like it lived inside him, the way it fit in his mouth, the way it echoed in his chest, as if his entire life had been quietly shaped around her absence. But she didn't know him. He had watched her walk out of that cafe, a half smile still lingering on her lips from a joke she shared with her friend. She passed right by him, just inches away, and didn't even flinch. No flicker of recognition, not a breath held in confusion. Nothing. It wasn't like in the movies. There was no slow turn of the head, no sudden gasp. There was just silence, and the weight of a love remembered by one heart only. He didn't go to work the next morning. He couldn't. His world had shifted, and spreadsheets felt like an insult to the storm inside him. Instead, he returned to the cafe. Same table, same time, same hope. He didn't expect her to be there, but she was, sitting by the window with a notebook in her lap, drawing something. Her brow furrowed the same way it used to when she was focused, except she never looked up, not once. He stayed for an hour, didn't order anything, just watched, and then he left, heart heavier than before. Each day after that, he returned, and each time, she was there, always drawing, always alone, always unaware. He started learning her patterns. Mondays she wore soft blue sweaters. Fridays she ordered iced green tea. She always sat with the window to her left. She always chewed on the end of her pen. It felt invasive, wrong even, but it also felt like witnessing a memory play out in real time, like watching echoes solidify into form. It took him a week to gather the courage to speak. "Hi," he said one morning, approaching slowly. His voice cracked. I think I know you." Claire looked up, polite, confused, guarded. "I don't think we've met," she said, voice even. Julian forced a smile. "No, I guess not. Sorry, must have mistaken you for someone else." But it wasn't a mistake. It was a ghost. That night, he dug through old journals, trying to trace a timeline that didn't exist. He had sketches of her face, fragments of conversations, feelings too detailed to be dreams. There were entries about a shared apartment, her laugh echoing down a hallway, the way she danced when no one was watching. The ache wasn't imagined. It was cellular, like his bones knew her. He thought about telling a friend, but how do you explain a heartbreak that hasn't happened yet? A few days later, she spoke to him. "You keep showing up," she said. Her tone was gentle, but firm. "Are you okay?" Julian hesitated. "I'm trying to understand something. Something about you, about us." "There is no us," she said, not cruelly, just stating a fact. "But what if there was?" Claire paused. Something shifted in her eyes. For a second, it felt like the world tilted, like she was remembering something too. A flicker of uncertainty, a pulse of déjà vu. But then she blinked, and it was gone. "Don't make me uncomfortable," she said softly, and walked away. Julian stood there, shattered in a way no one else could see. Because when you're the only one who remembers the love, you're the only one who carries the goodbye. Julian didn't go back to the cafe the next day. He couldn't face her. Not after the look she gave him, the gentle rejection, the weight of her words. "Don't make me uncomfortable." It echoed in his chest, looping endlessly. He hadn't meant to frighten her. He just wanted answers, connection, proof that he wasn't unraveling. Instead, he'd become a stranger with too much familiarity. For 2 days, he stayed away, walked different routes, tried to shake the ache from his ribs. He convinced himself he had to let it go, that maybe the memories were fragments from another life, symbolic, not real, just emotional leftovers from past heartbreaks. Maybe his mind had stitched someone together from all the people he'd ever loved, but logic didn't hold. Because when you remember the way someone cries in their sleep, or how they hated olives but loved olive oil, how do you dismiss that? On the third day, he returned. Claire was there, sketching again. Same seat, head down, but this time, something was different. There was a flower on the table, a single yellow daisy in a tiny glass cup, not from the cafe. He recognized it immediately. She used to keep them everywhere, in vases, in coffee mugs, even in old perfume bottles. He had drawn them once, dozens of times, trying to get the petals just right. They were her favorite. Mohad remembered that like it was tattooed behind his eyes. He ordered coffee, sat far enough not to be intrusive, close enough to see her. She never looked up, but she placed her pen down and stared at the flower for a long time. Then, slowly, almost hesitantly, she began sketching it. Julian's breath caught in his throat. She remembered something. Maybe not him, maybe not their story, but something had survived the deletion, some thread that couldn't be severed. He left without speaking. He didn't want to break it. Later that night, he sat on the floor of his apartment, surrounded by sketches, notes, pages torn from old journals. He laid them out like evidence, trying to map the shape of a love that had been erased. There were things he never wrote down but still knew. The way her voice dipped when she was nervous, how she held her breath before saying something important, the exact rhythm of her laugh. When it caught her off guard, he remembered the day she told him she was afraid of being forgotten. "Everyone leaves," she had said, lying beside him in the dark. "And I never remember how to let them go." The irony gutted him now. She had let go of him so completely, she didn't even know there was something to miss. He began to wonder, what kind of pain had driven her to do that? What memory had hurt so much she asked someone, or something, to take it from her? Was it him? Had he broken her? The thought hit him like a punch to the ribs. What if their love hadn't been beautiful? What if it had been too much, too consuming? What if he had failed her in a way he couldn't remember, but she could never forget? And what if forgetting him had saved her? He couldn't help but wonder what it would be like if she did remember. If, one day, she looked at him and saw the history they used to share written across his face. Would she smile? Would she cry? Would she hate him? He played every version of that moment in his mind like a broken reel. In one, she runs to him, tears in her eyes. In another, she slaps him across the face. In most of them, she simply walks away again, the weight of a forgotten love too heavy to lift. The daisy gave him hope, but it was fragile. Hope wrapped in paper, ready to tear. He didn't know what she was fighting to forget. He didn't know if her life had improved without him in it. Maybe she was better now, happier, safer, and maybe bringing the past back would only reopen wounds she chose to close. But there was also the haunting possibility that deep inside, she was waiting for someone to remind her of who she used to be. That, somewhere in the static of her everyday life, she was reaching out, in dreams she didn't remember, in drawings she didn't understand. And maybe, just maybe, he was still written in her story, even if the pages had been torn out. Claire didn't come the next day. Julian waited anyway, for hours. With coffee he didn't drink, and hands that trembled just slightly every time the bell above the cafe door chimed. But the yellow daisy was gone, the window seat empty. The soft hum of anticipation in his chest slowly gave way to a dull, familiar ache. Maybe it had been too much. Maybe the sketch, the flower, the question, had opened a door she wasn't ready to walk through. Or worse, maybe someone had closed it for her. He left a note anyway. No names, just one line. "We used to talk about what flowers mean. You said daisies were hope pretending not to be afraid. The next morning, she was there. Not sketching, not reading, just sitting, the daisy back in place. Her fingers tracing the rim of the cup like she was searching for something familiar in its silence. He didn't speak, but this time, he didn't leave either. He sat one table behind her, close, enough to hear her breathe, far enough not to scare the truth away. Hours passed like wind through a curtain, and then, without turning around, Claire slid something across to his table, a folded page from her sketchbook. Inside, two hands reaching for each other, one holding a flower, the other a matchstick, and beneath it 5 words. Are we lighting something dangerous? Julian swallowed hard. It was the first time she addressed what was happening between them. Not in riddles, not in echoes, but in raw metaphor. He wanted to answer everything at once. Yes, it was dangerous. Yes, it was real. Yes, he'd risk every version of himself to have her back. But he didn't write anything. He just folded the paper again, held it gently, and nodded once. Not toward her, but toward the window, like permission. Like faith. Claire didn't look at him, but she didn't leave either. After that day, everything shifted. They still didn't speak, not with voices, but their dialogue became something else entirely. A language of sketches and scraps, of small offerings left on corners of tables like devotional token. Julian left a drawing of a lantern flickering in the dark. Claire responded with a sketch of a hand shielding the flame. He wrote a single sentence on the back of a receipt. I never meant to vanish from you. She sent back a napkin with watercolor stains and 3 words. You didn't vanish. Burned. Each exchange was like peeling back another layer of silence, revealing scars neither of them could name yet. But they kept digging, carefully, like archaeologists of their own forgotten love. He started arriving earlier, just to see if she would glance at the door. She always did. She began sitting closer to the edge of the table, leaving space across from her. Not an invitation, but not resistance, either. And then came the memory that broke something open. Claire handed him a note. No drawing, just words. I remember crying in your coat. It smelled like cinnamon and rain. Julian read it a dozen times. His eyes stung, because that wasn't a dream. That was a Tuesday. It had rained all afternoon. She had missed a job interview. He wrapped her in his coat and made her laugh until she forgot the world had let her down. Now, years later, it lived in her again. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough. She was remembering in sensations, smells, warmth, music, skin. Julian wrote nothing back that day. He simply sat across from her, heart exposed in silence. Claire didn't look away, and that, more than any note or drawing, told him everything he needed to know. They weren't just unearthing the past, they were rewriting it. He didn't know what. She was fighting to forget. He didn't know if her life had improved without him in it. Maybe she was better now, happier, safer, and maybe bringing the past back would only reopen wounds she chose to close. But there was also the haunting possibility that deep inside, she was waiting for someone to remind her of who she used to be. That, somewhere in the static of her everyday life, she was reaching out. In dreams she didn't remember, in drawings she didn't understand. And maybe, just maybe, he was still written in her story, even if the pages had been torn out. It was a Tuesday when she finally said his name. Not in a letter, not in a sketch, out loud. He was standing at the counter, waiting for his coffee, when he heard it. Soft, hesitant, wrapped in the kind of quiet that can break a world apart. Julian. He turned slowly. Claire was seated in her usual spot, but something in her posture had changed. She wasn't hiding behind the window or her sketchbook. She was facing him directly, as if anchoring herself in a truth she was still scared to hold. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them moved. He took a step toward her, then another. When he reached her table, she didn't look away. I had a dream last night, she said. You were holding a photograph I couldn't see, but I could feel what it meant. Julian sat down across from her, breath shallow. What did it feel like? He asked. Claire blinked slowly. It felt like missing someone you already have. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was charged, fragile, sacred. I don't remember everything, she whispered, but I remember you laughing, and me crying, and your coat, and how your hand always found mine like it was coming home. Julian didn't speak. He reached across the table, palm up. Claire looked at it for a long time. Then she placed her hand in his. And just like that, something rewrote itself inside them. They sat like that for a long time. Two hands joined over cold coffee and quiet mornings that finally made sense. Claire didn't try to explain how the memories were returning. She didn't have to. Julian could see it in the way she looked at him now, not with curiosity or caution, but with grief, with recognition, with the ache of someone realizing what they had once given up. "I think I asked them to do it," she said softly. "The deletion. I think I chose to forget you." Julian nodded, not out of understanding, but acceptance. She looked away. "I don't remember why, but there was something that made me believe it was the only way to survive." He swallowed hard. "Maybe it was." Claire met his eyes again. "But now I'm here, and you're here, and I don't know what to do with that." Julian thought about the years. He'd spent chasing shadows, the journals, the sketches, the hope that refused to die. "You don't have to do anything," he said. "We don't owe the past anything, but maybe we could give something to the present." She smiled then, small, hesitant, but real, and for the first time since they'd met again, it didn't feel like a memory surfacing. It felt like something new. They began meeting outside the cafe. Long walks, quiet dinners, no pressure to explain, just presence. Two people letting the echo of love become a voice again. Some memories never returned. Some pain never explained itself. But Claire never forgot the flower. She began painting them everywhere. Daisies blooming in alleyways, on canvas, in the margins of menus and receipts, as if reminding herself, and him, that even in the places where they had once broken, something delicate had managed to grow. One evening, months later, they stood beneath a street lamp, wrapped in the hush of a city exhaling. Julian held her face in his hands. "If you ever want to forget me again," he whispered, "please, don't." Claire laughed, teary-eyed. "Not even if I begged?" He shook his head. "Not even then." And when she kissed him, it didn't feel like a recovery. It felt like a beginning. Because the truth was, sometimes love doesn't come back to you in the way you lost it. Sometimes it grows in the space where memory used to live, and if you're lucky enough, it chooses to stay. Some stories don't end where they broke. They begin again, between silences, in the soft undoing of fear, in a single name spoken aloud. Julian and Claire were never trying to find the past. They were learning to love what remained. And maybe that's what memory is, in the end. Not what we recall, but what chooses to return when we're finally ready to feel. If this story found a place in you, if it reminded you of someone you once lost, or someone you're still waiting to remember, subscribe to the Feelprint. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we echo the ones your heart already knows. Like, comment, share, and let someone else remember with you.